Good afternoon, fellow Rotarians and guests. Let us begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'd like to now invite up Brian Mulder, who will facilitate today's invocation.
Will you pray with me? Father God, we come to you today with gratitude. We thank you for all the blessings in our lives that include families, homes, the provisions that you provided to us. Lord, your word asks or tells us that if we ask for wisdom, that you'll give it to us. So, Lord, we do ask for your wisdom today as we serve those in the roles of leadership, that we serve those that we lead and mentor and guide. Father God, we thank you for this meal that we have and our time together. In Christ's name we pray. Amen.
Thank you, Brian, very much. Well, like all of you who have pursued retirement, I tried to pursue retirement with Rotary, and every now and then they bring me back in. So you get to put up with me today, and I thank Tony Knorr for giving me the opportunity to once again facilitate today's meeting when he is traveling. I'd like to thank our greeters today. As always, I appreciate you welcoming our Rotarians. Give them a round of applause. That is a lot of work, and we thank them for their efforts. And I would like to now give an opportunity for all of our guests to stand and be recognized today, please. All right. Welcome. Thank you for joining us today. Thank you. Okay. All right. We have a couple individuals I'd like to call out and ask to stand one more time. That would be Caden Green from Lincoln High School, our junior Rotarian, and also Jamie Young. All right. Thank you for joining us. Jamie will be speaking as the junior Rotarian here shortly, and we welcome her. Okay, we're going to now move into some Rotary business, and we have some exciting things today. I'd like to now welcome up Joel Sylvester, who will be introducing a new member, Olivia.
Good afternoon. Thank you, past President Jason filling in and fellow Rotarians. It's my honor today to introduce one of our newest members, Olivia Essig. Olivia is the campaign director for the Sioux Empire United Way. I've had the opportunity to work with her for the last 4 years on campaign stuff, including last year during a pandemic, where things were very, very interesting. A couple things that kind of stand out in my mind, and the reason why I'm excited to introduce Olivia to this group is she is extremely high energy, very busy. It seems like she's everywhere. Now that you guys are getting to know her, you'll see her all throughout the community doing different things. She also does a really good job of kind of absorbing a lot of different information from a lot of different groups throughout the Sioux Empire and making really good sound decisions. So as I think about the four-way test, I think she's going to be a really good fit here as part of our group. So I'll let her tell a little bit more about herself. Olivia?
Thank you, Joel, and thank you all for welcoming me in. I'm really excited to be a part of Rotary. I'm originally from Mitchell, South Dakota. I've been here in Sioux Falls for about 6 years now, though, and I really enjoyed it. It's been a great place to kind of start my career with United Way. And my parents were both Rotarians, and so I got my first taste of Rotary when I was quite young by being a guest of theirs when they would be going to their Rotary meetings. And so at that time, I don't know that I ever really, aspired to it. But then I've really been paying attention to all of the amazing programming and panels that are part of Rotary. And I've just been really impressed with it. And so when Joel brought it up, I thought it would be a great fit. I'm always looking for new ways to get involved. And I'm just really excited to be a part of it. And thank you again for welcoming me.
And the fun continues. We have another induction today. I'd like to now invite up Laura Mitchell, who will be introducing somebody she knows well, Chris Dugard.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Laura Mitchell, and this is my brother, Chris Dugard, and I am really happy to sponsor him today. If you would have asked me growing up, he was the one that got away with everything. I was the oldest. He was the youngest. He always, got the lax punishments and everything. So if I would have said, "Hey, do you think I'm qualified for Rotary?" I would have said, "Probably not. No, you get away with everything." But my tune is sure changed today. One of the most fun things that I got to do is work with my brother in a professional setting. We both worked for our dad's campaign for governor. He was right out of college, and I took a leave of absence from my job at Lawrence and Schiller, and we got to travel the state and learn a whole lot about politics. So with that, I'll let him introduce himself and tell you a little bit more about his career.
Thanks. Well, Laura wasn't selling me short, but she was selling herself short a little bit. In that today you're getting, I think, by far the third best Dugard child out of 3. So appreciate your willingness to let me join. A little bit about my history. I started my career in Pierre after the campaign. Actually, I worked for the Public Utilities Commission, did a little bit of telecommunications and alternative energy work for the PUC. Really enjoyed that. Got married and decided that Pierre wasn't going to be our long-term home. So moved to Sioux Falls, worked for Raven Industries here for the Aerostar division for a couple of years. And then since 2014, I've been with Ernst Capital. And if you're not familiar with Ernst Capital Group, we help really investors invest in commercial real estate projects in the region, really. So we're partnering with local developers and buying commercial property in kind of a 400-mile radius of Sioux Falls. So that's what I've been doing there. Really excited to join Rotary. Laura and I grew up with my dad being a member, obviously, of downtown, still is. And so the same first experiences of kind of, traveling with dad and being a travel Rotarian. We went to some other Rotary clubs in the area too during this or the other thing. And so really excited to join a group of servant leaders here in Sioux Falls. And thanks for letting me be a part.
So I have a few things to give you, but unlike the rest of the world, we have supply chain issues with Rotary packets. So you're going to get half of the material that you're going to ultimately get. So I really want to thank both Joel and Laura for bringing Olivia and Chris to the Downtown Rotary Club. The Downtown Rotary Club is a growing and thriving organization made up of servant leaders, and we look forward to you participating in our continued growth and excellence when it comes to the initiatives that we pursue. So thank you and welcome. The program. All right. I would like to, I'm sorry. We have got to do the junior Rotarian. I'm sorry. I told you I got to dust off the cobwebs. I'd like to now invite up our junior Rotarian, Jamie Young from Sioux Falls Christian High School.
Hi, and thank you for having me. As he said, my name is Jamie Young, and one thing I would like to share with you is what I learned from my mentor, my soccer coach. He always told us to do more with our lives. Although he meant this to do more outside of practice and work our bodies out more physically, I took that and applied it to my athletic, academic, and community life. I first applied it to my athletic life. Instead of just applying to just a few practices a week, I decided to start attending every single day, up to 3 times a day. And through that investment in myself, I learned that I can become better. And through that, I was able to gain a scholarship for soccer in college. Not only that, but I took that principle and applied it to my academic life. In my academic life, I always felt limited in only having to choose one major or even just 2 majors in college. So I decided through a lot of thinking and processing that I'm going to triple major in college with Spanish, education, and political science, so I can do more for my community around me, as I want to become an ambassador and represent the United States and their democracy and culture to other people around us. Not only that, but I want to retire into teaching so I can influence the next generation and be able to teach them to appreciate the culture that I've learned around the world. I also learned to do more in my community, as I started a small knitting group with a couple girls, so then we can help prepare those who are ill-equipped in the community around us in donating hats, scarves, and mittens to those that are less fortunate. And I also wanted to do more for the generation that I influence as the captain of the soccer team. And I am starting to mentor the girls so then they can do more for the next generation, and we can start a chain reaction so then that the next generation is better equipped than we are today. As many of you are business people, you know that investment is not without risk. But this is one investment that if you do it in yourself, it'll eventually pay off. Thank you.
We're a little rusty on the junior Rotarian plans. We're doing the remix. Now we're going to introduce Jamie to everybody. She's from Sioux Falls Christian. Her parents are here. Will you please stand, Jason and Lisa, to see Jamie with her speech today. Welcome to you. And there was a couple comments over here of, we wish we could find more successful junior Rotarians. It's not possible. They're amazing. Congratulations, Jamie, on all the things you've done and the things you're planning to do. So a little bit about Jamie. She is involved in soccer at Sioux Falls Christian. She is a member of the Good News Youth Group and Worship Band. You may have seen her. She's employed at B&G Milky Way and is also a nanny in the summers. And she talked about what her majors are going to be in college, and she plans to do that in Northwestern in Orange City. So again, thank you, Jamie, for being with us this month. Thank you for speaking. You have a very bright future ahead. So congratulations. Thank you.
Okay, now, Bonnie, I will let you and our 2 panelists join the stage for our program.
Ready? Fool me once. Well, hello, everyone.
Hi.
Got a little awkward there. I was like, yeah. So this is part 2 of our series on the future of work. And I wanted to invite for this one, as we talk about what's happening in businesses versus what we were talking about last week, as we were talking about the infrastructure that we needed to kind of build as a community to be prepared for the changes that are happening. And also wanting to take the conversation past workforce as just a need, but rather being more thoughtful about the culture of our community and the humans that are involved with this and what it means within an organization to make that possible. So for that, I asked my friends, John Meyer and Marsha Schmitz, people who I would consider the counterparts that I really look to that are doing amazing things. John, who's well, he's about to be unemployed, but
Yeah.
As he transitions out of Limerly and gets back out into the world, which I'm super excited for. And then Marsha, who does some work with one of my good friends and mentors, Sherry Kurtz, with Lead to Inspire, and is with Lloyd Companies as one of their people folks in that organization. So these are folks who are really built it and are really doing it and engaging in it. And so with that, we'll start this conversation.
Cool.
So workforce. Now, one of the things for me is that I understand the concept and the need of it and the importance of it. But when we use that word, a lot of times it is very narrow and it doesn't account for all of the things that affect humans. And as leaders are more and more challenged with how they attract and retain and develop talent, let's start with how we broaden the definition of workforce and how we should be looking at that in terms of the people that are involved in it.
Sure.
Well, I guess I would just say, you know, to your point, we have to start seeing them as people, right? Not human capital, not, you know, they're team members. They're the people that make up our organizations. They're the people that make our organization successful. So I think it's really, you know, not looking at it. I don't know. When I hear human capital, that always is just a cringeworthy thing for me. It's people, right? It's the people that we employ and that help us to do great things in our organizations.
Yeah, I can echo that. I started my career at Accenture in Minneapolis as a consultant. And I remember a line that they shared during training is our people are our greatest asset. You know, we look at the balance sheet and the people are the greatest asset. I think that was like well intended. It just didn't sound so great, right? That you were an asset on a balance sheet. And so I think when we say we have a workforce problem in Sioux Falls and South Dakota, in the entire country, I think you're right. We need to dig into what that means because that's a pretty general statement.
Yeah.
And I think each one of our businesses probably has their own unique workforce challenge. And there's not one stroke that we can paint across to solve it, right?
Yeah, for sure. And in a technical sense, on balance sheets, you know, the people show up as an expense.
Sure.
You know, the computers and the desks show up as assets. And that always struck me as strange.
Sure.
And now there's a new audience, right? There's a different audience of folks. I don't know that we should be surprised given that this is the result of work, but how would you assess this new group of individuals that we're all seeing right now? Because a lot of time we can put them into a caricature. A lot of times we make it seem like everyone's monolithic, but there are some commonalities. How would you describe this new audience people are challenged with in terms of engaging?
Yeah, I think we love to use generations as a bucket to put people in. And that can be handy as a tool, but it's not that clean, right? Just because of when you were born defines who you are as an employee and how I will treat you, as how I will recruit you, onboard you, train you. So I think what we're talking about is three-dimensional, right? And there you go, there's your commercial. Think 3D. So the idea of treating people and bringing your whole self to work, and now work you maybe aren't even leaving your home, so you're just bringing your whole self to work online, and that means your likes, your dislikes, your family needs, your personal interest, how you want to grow. And so it's hard, especially the larger your company gets, but the answer is that each person, you have to treat them each as an individual.
Yeah. Well, Marsha, that sounds enormous when you think of each person as an individual. How am I going to do that? You know?
Yeah. So I would say, you know, we've taken this approach when we started looking at the employee experience 3 years ago at Lloyd. We really started looking at how do we, you know, take and really achieve what we want to achieve. And we decided it first had to start with all of our leadership. So starting to invest in leaders to give them the tools and to give them this picture of what we expected of leaders at Lloyd, how we wanted them to interact with our people, give them the tools, how do they, you know, teach them how to have a great one-on-one with their team members so that the team member was getting out of it what they needed. We were setting expectations. We were achieving what we needed to as an organization too. And by doing that, we all of a sudden, you know, you start interacting with your people. And I think that's how you start to see them as individuals instead of just your workforce or your, were you going to add something?
Yeah, I think when you flip the switch from thinking them as managers, as sort of accountable, like making sure you get all your hours in and do your work, to instead the person in your corner, right?
Yeah.
Like, because now you're right, it's a big organization. Every single person, the CEO can't do that. But if you have 7, 8 direct reports, you can do that. And you can get to know them and be not seen as the person who's trying to say, hey, your timesheets are late, or you know, you didn't do well on your quarterly 360 review, to instead be like, I'm here in your corner in that one-on-one meeting. How can I eliminate obstacles for you? Because I can keep in touch with 8 people and get to know those my direct reports.
Right. Well, in most organizations, particularly ones that we work with, the people who feel the squeeze are obviously, you know, middle management. They're generally the folks that have the greatest span of control. And what has just traditionally happened in work is that the people who touch your most novice individuals, your very frontline people, your new people, the people who touch your customers, the people who touch a lot of the vendors are the most novice leaders. which doesn't make a whole lot of sense
Yeah.
when you just think
risky.
about it like that. And you have the greatest span of control. When you have a ineffective leader and they have a span of control of 12, 13, 14, 15, that effect is much more significant. It's kind of like when people are late and they're like, well, I was only 5 minutes late, but there's 20 people in the room. You weren't 5 minutes late. You were 100 minutes late, right? Like this kept everybody from doing what it is that they needed to do. One of the things that I'm always challenged by that we talk about is this idea of shifting from how we thought about work, where it was single function, post depression. People were truly lucky to have a job. Industrial revolution, factory jobs, you bang the widget in and what's it, and that's all you did, you went home. Now jobs are far more dynamic. And what people are engaged by is way different. We talk a lot about the idea of money in that if you are in someone's employ, you are underpaid. I'm sure you all thought that before you came in here anyway. But if you are in someone's employ, you're underpaid because they can't pay you to what you produce. Because if they paid you to what you produce, there'd be no profit.
Mm-hmm.
We challenge people all the time. We say, what would you do if you had enough money? And people say, well, I would get a hobby farm. I would go fish. I would travel the world. I would spend more time with my grandkids. Because we can all agree if we had enough money, we wouldn't be at work, or at least not in the same way that we are. But we go to a system looking for enough money from a system that benefits from us not having enough money.
Sure.
And so the idea of money solving things, I think, is far past its time. What are those things that really ground people and engage them and attract them and retain them?
I think what we're seeing more and more, especially post-COVID, is that people want to find a purpose at work, right? And so as employers, if we can help them find that, and if that aligns with what our purpose is as an organization, that is meaningful to that team member. It helps them engage. You just mentioned engagement. We talk a lot about not wanting just to simply have clock punchers. We want people who care about what we're trying to achieve. And, there's not one thing that we do. There's a lot of small things that we do that, to keep our team engaged. But we often joke, none of it's rocket science, right? There's not one magic thing that we do. There's a lot of little things that we do that keep our team engaged.
At your event last week, I shared this idea of this concept of the Great Resignation. People heard this term? So 11.5 million people left their jobs in America in Q2, so in April, May, June. A poll said 55% of Americans have thought about changing jobs or careers. And a Gallup poll said 48% are actively seeking a career or job change. So I think my gut reaction is if you would say, well, that's probably lower in Sioux Falls, I think I might actually accept that and say you might be right, because some of the things people are looking to get away from, the grind, the daily commute, cost of living, place to raise a family, Sioux Falls checks those boxes. But let's just say it's 33%. So look to your left and right, either a neighbor or yourself have thought about, considered, or even actively pursuing a career change. And so I think what these articles are saying is this great resignation has come. And I think that it may, but it's really more was like a great recalibration, right? Like we decided COVID just made us think about, we can still love our jobs and still love our careers, but it's okay to also love our family and our hobbies and our personal interest and to recalibrate maybe where they all rank on the list.
And I would even flip that. I would say, love your family and it's okay to love your job.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Because, when we ask people why they work, that's why they say why they work. One of the things when we ask people why they work and they say to pay bills, it breaks my heart, because that's just for me, that's a poor way to spend a life, spending your money to, pay bills, and a lot of people, they think if you work hard, you make money, you buy the stuff, and maybe the stuff makes you happy. Sure. And that's at the end of the process. And that can't be at the end of the process. When we started Think 3D, one of the things we heard from people all the time is like, we were actually at a 5-year plan. We were going to launch this year, the consultant piece. But then we heard people freaking out about millennials. They're like, these millennials, they're like, they want to leave at 5. And they want a corner office in 3 years. And they want flexibility. And they just want to take whatever breaks that they want. They're like, so do you. So do you. We just convinced ourselves And that's something that we don't necessarily get. But to get into the brass tacks of what we can do about it, and I want to brag on Lloyd Companies for a little bit because we do some work with you all. And when we did the survey, one of the things that we heard consistently is what is the most important word that you want to hear from your workforce, and that is pride. Person after person after person, they said, I'm proud to work here. And what people should understand about pride is that whenever you hear pride promotes, pride protects, pride problem solves, and pride perseveres. When a person has pride in your organization, they will tell people about it. They will try to bring people to it. They will work through issues. They will protect the organization as if it's their own, because it is a representation of themselves and their work. And it's a powerful, powerful word that you don't get a lot. How do you feel like you all drove to pride that particular word?
Well, again, I don't think it was just one thing. I think it was a lot of different things. But it's, that shift in caring about the team member as a person. And again, giving our leaders the skill and the tools to be able to have meaningful conversations with them, letting them know that, hey, we want you to know about their life outside of work. If you're one-on-one, if you spend the first 20 minutes, 15 minutes catching up on what this team member is doing outside of their work hours, and please talk to them about what their dreams and their goals are. Find out, what more they want to learn and how they want to grow. So I think that helped. I think, I always like to keep things simple, and I think when we as leaders in the organizations make sure that our team knows they're valued and appreciated, that goes so far. That's everything, right? I mean, it's a human need, actually. Every one of us in here needs to feel valued and appreciated. And when we as leaders can share that with our team and let them know that they are important in our organization, when we ask for their opinions and then have conversations, like, it's not that every idea that a team member brings us is, something that we're going to implement, but we really try to take the time to explain, why we might not be able to implement that. Number one, the team member will learn, their next idea will be better, but it also just shows that we care. We want them to keep bringing their ideas, right? So innovation is a big initiative for us, and that comes from our team. We've worked really hard with our frontline folks to, because I think sometimes they're often forgotten in organizations, and they really do have so much impact. They're the ones that touch our customers most often. And so we want to make sure that they know that we want to hear how we keep getting better. We did a Project Innovate with our entire organization a couple of years ago, and they had the most fun. They got to just get together and do a SWOT analysis with like folks within the organization, and then they got to pitch it to our leadership team, and they loved having everybody's ear and to be able to share their ideas. So I don't know that it's just one thing that we do, but I think it's a big combination of things that make a difference.
We were talking semantics earlier about expense versus or asset versus like investment or where it falls on the balance sheet. And I think there's this concept called employer branding, where essentially your team, your front lines start to market your company for you, right? And do sort of become the megaphone. And I think at Lemonly, we've achieved that. We had a project manager job open recently, fairly entry level, in a workforce shortage era with 43 applicants, right? People talk about wanting to work at Lemonly or being a part of feeling like as if they own part of the business, even though they don't. And so that becomes an investment, right? Now you have a talent pipeline. You can do, of course, like referrals. So you can give, bonuses for referring friends. But you build a talent pipeline when you start to think of it as an investment. People go out and spread the good news.
Yeah. And I think it's important for us to make sure our team understands that this is their organization as well. And you want to work with the best people, help us find the best people. And I think in our situation, I feel like we're cheating a little bit just because we're a little bit more mission-based. And so we have people ask us off schedule to work for us outside of a position. But I'm glad you brought that up because that's one of the biggest challenges we have. So when we onboard clients, one of the things that we'll do is we ask them, what are the characteristics that you would want in a person that you are going to work for, work with, or have work for you, right? So a person you're going to do life with, 10 to 15 years, what are the characteristics or attributes you would want that person to come with? And without fail, they all say integrity, they say trust, they say dependability, they say focus, self-starter, da-da-da-da-da. They say somebody that's funny, that's enjoyable to be around, those type of things. And then as we're doing that, my business partner, Tammy, will pull up one of their job descriptions or job openings. And then we'll say, well, how many of those words are in this? How many words do you think actually make it? Usually 0, maybe punctuality.
Sure.
Might make it. And so we challenge people. Why would you be frustrated that you're not getting the people that you want when those are the people that you're asking for? There's 2 reasons why you have a job description. One is to persuade the people you want to apply and dissuade the people you don't want to apply. How many people have ever filled out a job application, looked at the job description, and the job was as hard as the job description made it seem? Almost never. And in many cases, we do such a good job of keeping people away that we don't collect them and then develop them, which is a more realistic strategy than finding the right person for this right position. That's not very likely. So as we think about pushing the energy out, because there's a lot of people saying right now, okay, great, this is all well and good. We want to take care of people, but I need people.
Yeah.
And our biggest thing is recruitment happens by way of retention, because you can't hire who you want if you're busy hiring who you need. And so retention is the baseline to keep people there so that you can use time and discernment to find the right person in your culture. But how do we start taking that culture and then aiming it out into the world to really be that lighthouse and attract those talented folks to these different organizations?
When you hit on mission, which I think is huge, I think core values, I'm a big believer in core values, because you're not only virtue signaling who you want to work with you, but again, actually who maybe you don't want to, right? Yeah. Your interview process should be a filter mechanism so that we are making a match where I want the person on the other side of the desk to also say, is Lemonly right for me? Like we may decide, we think you're right for us, but they might decide through the process that actually they're not right or you're not right for them, right? Yeah. I think that's so key. So we're starting with a talent pool of engaged group who you already have high chance that they're going to stay and be invested. So core values, telling the story. I think your hiring and recruiting should feel like your company, right? So how do you take them through the experience, or how do they get a sense by the end of that second or third round interview that they know the place they're about ready to come, work for?
Or even if you go through the experience, that's one of the things that we ask leaders. I would encourage all of you to go through your hiring experience.
Sure.
Like go through it, fill out the application, go online, look for it, try to find it, see how it makes you feel.
Yeah.
See if you feel like you're in the 21st century. See if it feels like it's a warm and welcoming place, or if it's function. Fill out this box, that box, that box, and then maybe we'll hire.
I also think you have permission to customize and tailor your benefits, right? I feel like we think we all have to it's a competition for, so yeah, throwing more money at the hourly wage might be the answer for some people, but it could be, we know flexibility is now table stakes. You have to have flexibility. I would argue if your company doesn't have some sort of hybrid plan for the future, you will lose talent. Now I know that if you're manufacturing or retail, that may not be possible, but if you can have hybrid remote work, you must keep doing it, not just in a pandemic. We know the data backs that up, but also things like, what if you, instead of maybe giving a gym membership, you gave them $50 stipend for home cleaners, or an executive assistant that's not just for the executives, that it's a shared person that can help organize children's birthday parties, or book appointments, or how do we gain leverage so that our people can do the things they want to do most and that they're best at? So, throw out the comp package and look at each single item, rethink it.
There is no box.
Right. I'm a perfect example of that at Lloyd, because I'm not there 40 or plus hours a week. And that was negotiated, when I joined the team, but it works for both of us.
And they wouldn't have otherwise they wouldn't have you if it was 40 hours minimum required.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And I would say I agree with all of that you're saying as far as the recruitment goes. And we have a saying at Lloyd that we hire for culture fit. So we might have somebody that's skilled to do the job, but we don't believe they'll be a good culture fit. And so we'll keep looking for that culture fit. And so just like you said, you've got to it's a different set of questions when you're trying to find out if they fit your culture than if they can do the job.
Yeah. Well, that's a big one too, because sometimes it feels like you're passing over talent that you need, but sometimes people are not being thoughtful about that. When we talk about the major reasons why people leave organizations, one is a poor leader, and two is a lack of accountability for their peers. When people feel like they're working with other people who aren't in it, they're less in it. And eventually they want to go to a place where they feel like people are all rowing in the same direction.
Yeah.
And so no matter how much a person produces, if they're undermining the culture, they're doing you a disservice. And there's no amount of money or no amount of work that one person can produce that justifies them undermining the culture.
And we've all been there, right? You have that person that you've probably wait way too long to let go.
Yep.
And then you finally do it. And then on Monday the next week, everybody just like breathes easier.
Yeah.
Like that's a pretty good signal that like probably should have done that.
Yeah, people feel good. You know, I'm always nervous when I drink. I feel like I'm drinking like soup.
These were full.
It's
too.
filled.
They were,
It's very
they were
much
really
brim.
full.
It's dicey, but so as we talk about that, what are some? Let's bounce some things around. What are some other things that you think about? One of the things, like for instance, I hear from a lot of folks, you know, as they think about like cell phone policies and things of that nature. You can't keep them off of their phone. I don't know that you want to. In terms of what you were pointing out earlier, how do you do it in a more intelligent way? For instance, you know, that is the demographic most of you are likely looking for. Is their peers, is their friends. How do we create safe spaces for them to engage and promote the business? Do contests that reward them for the likes or reward them for the views that they get talking about your business and why that's fun and things of that nature, to be dynamic where, again, there is no box.
I would just share that, you know, right now we are looking for good people like many of you guys are in your organizations. And so we have created a different, we've always had a referral program, but we have a little different one. There's a little more, you know, in it, I guess I could say. And it's interesting how when you start to watch team members' social media pages, obviously they obviously want to, you know, find great people that come to work alongside of them. But what they say about the organization as they're trying to promote it to their friends and family on social media, it's pretty telling, you know, what they think about the company that they work for. So that's been pretty neat to see.
I think in our case, like profit sharing has been a huge one. It really aligns this idea of we're all in this together. And when we win, everyone wins, right? Yeah. We only had 2 owners, but like we said, this is the goal. Like everything we get past this goal, we'll do some sort of, you know, revenue sharing. And it was based on how long you were at the company. So that sort of encouraged, you know, to stay and stick around, retention. I'm a big believer in your core values connecting to your benefits. So one of Lemonly's core values is adventure. We always hired young 20-something people because that's what we were when we started the company.
Yeah.
And so what we didn't have in maybe compensation package, we had in responsibility and freedom. You know, we said, take risk, ask for forgiveness instead of permission. And then, so when you hit your 5-year anniversary at Lemonly, you get a $2,500 bonus, like cash, to take a adventure, but you have to do it outside of North America, right? So you have to go somewhere, probably where English is the second language, and you're getting uncomfortable. Because we believe we value adventure, and that's how you should grow. So we're going to take you on an adventure, right? And so now you have a perk that connects to a core value that tells you something about who we are as an organization. So
are things like this scalable? Because for a lot of people, you know, they're thinking,
Sure.
okay, sweet.
Yeah, we're only 18 people. Yeah.
Yeah, live your life. You can do that. That's a great idea. You know, for us, we're a small team as well.
Yeah.
Are these type of things scalable? Are they realistic for somebody that has, you know, 200, 300, 400 employees?
I mean, I think the dollar amount can certainly ratchet up or down, right? Depending on what makes sense. We know the flexibility thing is a table stakes now. And I think I mentioned on that hybrid remote part, I mean, think about, let's say you're going to college, right? You're a senior. So if you were just in college, you've been in college for the last 2 years, you've probably had a heavy dose of remote, if not 100% remote, some sort of hybrid college experience. Or if you just started your professional career, you're 24, and you just spent the last year being remote, why do we think they're just all of a sudden going to choose and elect to come back and sit at a desk for 40 hours straight from 8 to 5, not straight, but every day? You know, so like the workforce is changing when we talk about workforce, and we need to match that. I don't know if I answered your question at all.
No, that's helpful. Well, I'm interested in this as well because, you know, Gallup, as well as other polling organizations suggest that the average leader believes that the folks that work for them out of an 8-hour day are actually truly working for 4 hours, 4 to 5 hours. But then you ask those same leaders if they were ever consider going to a 6-hour workday, and they say, absolutely not. We can't do that. We got to go about 8 hours. And it seems so strange to me that people are resigning themselves to the idea that they only actually believe that their people are working half the time, but they would never expect them to work less time, to work more effectively in more compact ways, because that's just not how we conventionally think about how we run organizations.
Yeah.
It's 40-hour work weeks, 2 15-minute breaks, 30-minute lunch, 9 to 5, blah, 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 these type of things. And the interesting thing is when I ask leaders why they do this, almost 100% of the time, no one can really give me a legitimate answer as to why they do. Why do you think that is? Why do you think there's such a challenge from breaking out of this is the way we've always done it, especially when it's not producing the results? If you're winning, knock yourself out.
Yeah.
But if it's not producing the results that you want, why do you think it's so challenging for us to break away from that ideal?
I think change is hard. People don't like change. I mean, you're citing like the definition of insanity, right? Is doing the same thing, expecting different results.
Yeah.
I think the industrial, like the 40-hour work week was for the industrial revolution age, which is changing. And the idea of trying new things, I think we're always just change averse to that concept, right? And so what if, I think you say that, or I don't remember who said this one, it's what if I invest in my employee and they leave, after I put all this time and they go to conferences and skills and learning and development? Well, what if you don't invest in them and they stay, right? So what do you have to lose, right? You're talking about what if, we're not even trying it, right? We're not even stepping up to the plate and attempting. I love I say, let's use the E word. So like, let's experiment taking, we work with Chevron as a Lemonly client. They do 9, they call it like 9 out of 10 or something like that. So every other Friday they are off. So you do 9 days out of 10 out of 2 weeks of work. But they kind of schedule that so that the team is, the right people are working on that Friday. So it's staggered, right? Not everybody is gone every Friday. It's just like a 50-50 thing. What if we just try that for a month? Let's just say, let's try that for October, see what happens. And we say in this experiment, to me, that means we're going to look at the data, regroup in November. And if it didn't work, it didn't work.
I always like to try pilot programs, right?
Yeah.
Same kind of thing where let's try it with a segment of our team so that it's not this wild expectation that we've now crossed this line and we've done, this big change. But, if we can do it and prove it, that it works, it's a lot easier than to take it and cross that over to the rest of the organization.
Yeah. Well, and now I think we have something to measure it up against, which is attrition costs. It seemed like frivolous dollars being spent on culture and the money may not be worth it. But now we realize there's something a little bit different. So many people did not even know, and many people may not even know now what their attrition numbers are in terms of replacing a particular person. I grew up in call centers. And going through that process where you're talking about a situation where it might cost $15,000 to get somebody from the door to the floor, and then probably about another year before that person is in a compliance, a liability for regulatory environments. And so we're talking about situations where you're spending a considerable amount of money. Mm-hmm. And we're also talking about places that will have attrition in 35, 40, 45%, insane amounts of money that are going out of the door. And then it seemed like a frivolous purchase to get a pool table or whatever, or let somebody, leave a little bit earlier in the day. And so now that we're up against these huge numbers that people are spending on, recycling, retreads in most cases, what are some ways that we can start to put it again? And I actually want to focus a little bit more on content in particular, telling that story. We advise a lot of our clients to really be thoughtful about how do you share that message, whether it be through podcasts, whether it be through video. A lot of people are still sending a newsletter. There's not a lot of people who are reading that newsletter. Yeah. Some of these things might have click rates of 10, 15, 30%. You're doing pretty good, right? What are some other things that we could do to put the word out there, to tell that story, to broaden the base, for folks as we try to attract folks.
Yeah, I'm a huge believer in like documenting the process or capturing content, right? Like one thing we've thought about is what about an internal podcast? What if Lemonly's 18 employees? We're merging with another company right now. What if we had a podcast, a 20-minute episode with each employee?
Yeah.
And we sit down, we talk to them, we ask them, what do you do here? What do you love about Lemonly? What's your funniest story? Whatever it might be. And so today we have a new person join. Emily started today. What if she could sit down and put her AirPods in and have 17, 20-minute episodes that over the course of the next couple of weeks she could listen to and get to know each employee on the team. Especially she might be remote, or we have employees who don't even live in Sioux Falls.
Yeah.
It'll be maybe a year until our retreat where she gets to meet those people physically. So that's one idea. This is content is just a form of leverage, right? You're capturing it once. Our conversation on my podcast, which has been heard 500 times.
Yep.
We couldn't even get 500 people in this room to listen to that conversation, but it's now there and will be there forever.
Yeah.
Yeah, we do Torque Talks. Chris Torkelson, who is our president and CEO, occasionally we'll do a little Torque Talks video for our team. Sometimes it's live, sometimes it's recorded. And that's, I would say getting him out of his box, right? When we first introduced this to him, he didn't really know. But it's just another way to, our team is well over 200 people now, and we're in many different regional markets. And so it's another way to just keep him in front of that group and to be able to share what's happening at an organizational level with everybody. So that's one of the
I know
things
the
we do.
CEO of Airbnb, every Sunday night, he writes like an email to his team called like Sunday night email.
Yeah.
Just like what's going on in the company, things he's thinking about right now, the challenges they're facing. It's like a nice, hey, our leader is transparent. We get an idea of what's going through his head. When you start to think that way, when everyone knows what the CEO is thinking, then they start to think some of those things too, which is pretty powerful.
Right. It gives people an idea of how the thought process works. It gets them to think past their chair.
And to your point, like you don't have to be on video
Right.
or do a podcast.
Yeah.
So if the CEO of Airbnb prefers to write an email.
Right.
If you're Vaney, you should be on stage with the microphone, right? That's what Vaney does best.
Right.
So yeah.
Right. Do your thing.
I would say the other thing that we like about that is that we have then the entire team who's able to talk with their neighbors and their friends about what's happening at our organization.
Yes.
So it's one more way for us to share a story with more, as opposed to having your frontline folks maybe that don't often hear from the CEO, not know when the neighbor asks them about, well, what's the Sioux Steel project happening down here, and they don't know anything about it. So it gives them, I think that goes back to that pride thing, right? If we can keep our team informed, not only are they thinking about, how to keep helping us get better, but they're able to share that message with more people too.
We had a big year of change. We had pandemic in 2020 and we're acquired in 2021.
Yeah.
And I'm grateful for our friends at ClickRank because each time we had that big change, it was first told internally, right?
Yeah.
Everybody knew before you guys knew. Whether that be the acquisition, the building, like that's an important thing.
Yeah,
that change is delivered inside out.
Yeah. Quick, how do we think about education and growth? One of the things that we talk about is people are like oak trees. The higher it is, they feel like they're going to grow, the deeper it is, they set their roots. And we see a change in this dynamic in terms of how we think about education, right? Like I think there was a point where it was like a handoff, like we got people from the education system and they were done.
Sure.
And then they worked. But we realize that people are lifelong learners. They can never stop educating themselves. That has to happen. So how do we do that? Especially as we see organizations like Dyson and we see organizations like Google taking people straight from high school, putting them in a dorm, having them do almost work as an intern, educating them in the way that they want them to be educated, teaching them how they want engineers to understand engineering. As those things come, how do you see that playing in the role or organizations playing in the role of development in education?
I think it's so important. I think, and I have this written on a board in my office, it's what are we doing to set our team up for success? That's our job as leaders. That's, if we've got to give them the tools, just like I talked about, we identified we needed to give our leaders better insight and better tools and develop their skills to be, the stronger leaders to take us to where we want to go. consistently investing in them. And, you know, as our business changed, those needs change. And so do we have team members that are able to maybe grow into some of these roles? Can we invest in them that way? Which, you know, we always want to be able to promote from within and help them grow. So I think I get bored doing the same thing over and over again, right? So if we're not challenging them to get out of their comfort zones and to try hard things, and oftentimes people just need somebody to say, like a leader identify something in them that maybe they don't even see in themselves. So if we can help them have the confidence to take on something new or dip their toe in something that they maybe hadn't before, that's big.
There's this term upskilling, I think that's used, I think is appropriate. Like, could be it doesn't mean you have to go back and get a master's, you know, or leave work for a year. It's a certificate, it's a weekend course, it's a online thing, a cohort-based thing. I think the way you get your leadership to buy into it is, you know, I've heard the stat that my daughter Margot, she's a kindergartner, 50% of the jobs that will exist out there when she graduates high school don't yet exist, right? So like, I could sit down with her and be like, Margot, what do you want to be when you grow up? A doctor, a lawyer, a teacher, a graphic designer? Those are 4. There's 4 other ones I don't even know how to articulate to her, right? Because she's only almost 6. And so I think that means we all need to be upskilling, right? We can't put those roots in too deep.
Oh, as we land the plane, what is a blind spot that we have as a business community or as a community at large that is potentially moving us further away from either how we think about workforce or actually fulfilling our needs?
I don't know if blind spot works or not. I guess one thing I would like to see, I wish we would recruit people versus companies. So I think, you know, it makes sense to GoEd will go after a large company through, say, tax breaks or something like that to attract a lot of jobs to the community. But what if we just attracted people to come to Sioux Falls and just see what happens, right? Like maybe they're even going to take their remote job and move to Sioux Falls. Like they work at Google, but they're going to come to Sioux Falls. Maybe they'll keep working at Google. Maybe they'll come work at Lemonly. Who knows? But, you know, I want a billboard outside of San Francisco airport that shows a $500,000 house in Sioux Falls, which is a pretty nice house, right? And says, this is what 500 grand will buy you. Hashtag the other SF, right?
Yeah. Like, ooh, I like it.
I've told Paul about this idea already. So, but yeah, like what happens then? What happens when interesting people move to our city and they bring diverse ideas and different backgrounds and they convince their friends to come to Sioux Falls? And I mean, we've all heard the line, it's hard to get people to come here. It's easy to get them to stay.
Right.
But we need to get them on the plane to come here first. And so I don't know if that's a blind spot or just something I'd like to see a different strategy.
I dig it.
This probably isn't so global as how John's thinking, but and this probably isn't really a blind spot. We all know that it's that frontline workforce is really hard right now to keep employed or to find that group. So I think as organizations, if we figure out how to keep that group engaged in our organizations, that's how we win, right? I think sometimes they're maybe the attention isn't always on that group to keep them engaged, right? So we talk a lot about finding great leaders and in our organizations, but what are we doing to make sure that frontline worker team member is highly engaged in what we're doing as organizations?
Yeah, I think what she's saying here is we hear a lot about the hourly rate, right? And so like Amazon's coming to town, and so you can't throw money at the problem, right? I mean, you need to be competitive, but that's not going to be enough.
It's not going to be enough, all right?
Yeah, culture is currency. You know, one of the things that I would say is I really look for organizations to become, you know, more community engaged. And that doesn't necessarily mean, you know, because many of our organizations are gracious givers and they do amazing things that way. But how do we engage programmatically at different levels in our organization, providing access, leadership, connection, all of those different type of things, playing a part in people's lives in a different way so you can find out the things that are impeding them engaging with you. We were just talking last week, we have a considerable amount of people who just struggle to be able to pay for the GED test. You know, there's just a small thing that could be overcome to make somebody viable in a different way, or taking nurses exams and things of that nature. Just little things like that. Transportation issues, as we were talking about infrastructure last week. And a lot of times you get to know that by engaging with folks at the ground level. And it's not always a direct line to it. There's not always a direct ROI to what it is that you're doing, but there is always an ROI to what it is that you're doing. And I think when people engage in the community, you allow yourself to benefit in ways beyond what you can comprehend. When we're always maneuvering and we're always trying to do this for this, that quid pro quo type of thinking, you can only get out of it in most cases what you intended to get out of it. But there's so much more available than what you intended to get out of it. And when you engage with people at a ground level and you make real investments without the expectation of getting something back directly, it leaves you open to benefit in ways you could never have imagined. And I think those are the opportunities that a lot of organizations have not taken advantage of that I would really like to see them.
I mean, how many leaders of tomorrow, Leadership Sioux Falls, MBs, women's leadership, like if those were fixed line items in the budget, how many programs could, like how many cohorts could you do? Like, is it a supply issue or is it a demand issue?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I'll tell you, you know, as a person who does Leaders of Tomorrow, we're talking to a fraternity now of 200 plus people who, quite honestly, I would, you know, put money on. You know, they're bankable and because they have some development and they seek it. But we have so many more people that this can touch and that this can engage. And how do we make it something that's truly a community thing to change the dynamic of how we have this conversation? Well, that's what we got for today. That's the time today. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that's the time that we have. For anybody that's watching, make sure you follow us and make sure you subscribe so you have access to these things right away when they come out. This is really great programming. We appreciate John and Marsha for being here, and we appreciate all of you for coming to see and spending this time to think about how we can better improve our community and make sure that we're ready for the future.
Thanks.
Vaney, John, and Marsha, thank you again for joining this group and joining all of our viewers online. This is such an important topic, and I thank you for your leadership in walking us through the complexities of it and the opportunities in front of us as a community and as business leaders to compete effectively in this ever-changing marketplace. The discussion around serious topics continues, and next week is going to be absolutely no exception. Next week's program on Monday, October 4th, will dive into the complexities of suicide. So we welcome all of you to join us for that very important conversation. Thank you for being with us today. We'll see you next week.